Alrighty, there we go. So hello everyone, it's great to see all you guys. Today we're here for the Pirates of the Caribbean Behind the Score. So far we've done, I think, 4 Hans Zimmer scores at this point. We've done The Imitation Game by Alexandre Desplat, Prometheus by Harry Gregson Williams and Mark Stratfield, and we've also done Chronicles of Narnia and Hacksaw Ridge by Rupert Gregson Williams. So we have a pretty big canvas that we've sort of set so far with different film scores and breaking them down and analyzing them. And this time we're going for Pirates of the Caribbean, which is one of my personal favorite film scores of all time. It's a fairly complex film score in terms of the sort of the wit and the emotion and the intensity, and I think the versatility, most definitely, because it has those beautiful love themes that especially were established in the second film. But it also has that very sort of aggressive, action music, but also that very sort of funny Jack Sparrow-y type music. And we'll take a look at all the thematic material. And so, yeah, let's just go ahead and start at the beginning. So the first track that we start out with is called One Day, which is actually a track from At World's End, which, of course, was composed by Hans Zimmer, plus any other composers that were obviously on the project. And I know for each project there were many additional music composers. For example, Nick Glennie Smith, who's also the conductor on all the Pirates movies, plus Pirates 5, which is coming out tomorrow, composed by Geoff Zanelli, who also worked on the other films. He did some additional music on the first film as well as conducting it, of course. So the first track has this very sort of soaring, elegant feel to it until it gets into the main sort of pirate theme. And the reason why I chose that specific scene to go over this theme, the da 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 da, is that when it first introduces that theme in the first movie, that's actually the scene that it shows. So like right when you see Jack Sparrow when he's in it has that shot where it's him on the mast of the ship. That's what we wanted to go ahead and do for this little section. So going from there, then we go into the main love theme from the third movie as well, which is At World's End, and this is the love theme between not Jack. I'm still stuck on the Titanic behind the score. This is between Will and Elizabeth. So that's what we do there. And but yeah, let's just go ahead and start out with our first theme here. So orchestrating this one was a bit difficult because I should probably just say this. Hans Zimmer is probably the most difficult composer to mix in a sense because he has so much going on in the lower sections of the orchestra. For example, he's got low choirs, low percussion, low synthesizers, low strings, low everything, and it's very, very difficult to mix. Luckily, he has Alan Meyerson, and he also has a sort of producer mind that sort of helps in that endeavor. But it's a very, very difficult thing to mix. So in general, it took a lot of time, probably simply for the mixing. But yeah, so I'll go ahead and play this just so you guys know what I'm talking about. So the first thing you'll notice is this ostinato line that comes in. This comes in on the strings and the hammered dulcimer, so you'll be able to hear it like this. And the dulcimer is actually doing more of an arpeggio than it is an ostinato, which the strings are doing. And if I just go ahead and pull out a big string patch and actually play what's going on. So we have a D minor, right? B flat, F, C sus4. Yeah, so it's pretty simple chord progression, commonly used in pop music, but only Hans Zimmer can take simplistic chord progression that are used in pop music and make them sound brilliant. But yeah, so that's what we have going on there. And it's pretty much we just have a build until we go into this next section where we have. Let me go ahead and solo out the brass for this section because that's probably the most obvious part of it. And so one thing that I actually had to change simply because of sampling and for this behind the score is actually if I pull out a piano, it sort of goes like this. So the strings are actually much, much quicker, but sampling hasn't really got to the point where strings can be that incredibly versatile. So what I did is I did Right, and then we have our main theme. Right. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the whole entire recreated suite is actually in the key of D minor. So we stay in the key of D minor the whole time, whether it's for this line, you know, or for that beginning section. Right? And then, of course, we have our main theme. Right, so the whole entire thing stays in the key of D minor, including that ending thing where we have that, again, this love theme that derives from the love theme between Will and Elizabeth, but sort of is played in the oboe, which is a completely different orchestrational approach that I think was the right decision, especially in that very sort of intimate, emotional section, which is actually the post-credit scene at the end of Pirates of the Caribbean 3, and it goes like this. And one of my favorite aspects of this is those suspensions. They're so incredibly emotional, right? So, and then on this one, he does the B flat. He does the F suspension, which of course is. And I love when he does his suspensions to the minor instead of suspensions to the major. It's so incredibly beautiful. So that's that love theme at the end of the film, which is sort of a take on Will and Elizabeth's love theme, but like I said, introduced in a different orchestrational approach. So one of the things that you'll notice automatically from the Pirates of the Caribbean score, and if you listen to a lot of Hans's scores, but in this one specific, you'll find that there's a whole lot of low choir action going on. And there's this whole section of the cue. Let's see. Yeah, these tracks right here. So there are 4 different choir tracks going on right now, right? So we have Men's, the articulation. We have a different Men's articulation. We have O's and we have Ah's, and those are all. One of these is from Omnisphere, and the other 3 are from Lacrimosa, which is by 8Dio. And I'll just play like a little section of that, so you can get like a little feel for what that is. So it adds this sort of other dimension to the music that you don't naturally get from the strings, the brass, or the woodwinds. You sort of saw that in Crimson Peak, which is another score that Hans did. And the choir was sort of arranged by Harry Gregson Williams, but it sort of introduced that choir feel that I think is very, very resonant in this score in specific. So going into this section, the brass section that I was telling you about, so in addition to that string ostinato line that we had, we go into this different string ostinato line, which sort of is accompanying, let me see, there's so much going on. Here we go. So we have the dulcimer, and then we have our Sini staccato. So yeah, so this is going into that main pirate theme. Right, so if I just grab this patch and play it, this is an interesting patch because it has 2 different ensembles at the bottom and at the top. So, you know, it's sort of going like, you know, so that's what we have going on there. It's a fairly simplistic section. And then, of course, if I just solo the horn line, or if I just play it for you, actually, so. This is just one of our many Pirates themes. So we have so many themes in this film, and that's what makes this film different from a lot of the other Hans scores that I've done. Is that, you know, Inception, you don't really have a main theme that's like used all throughout the film, just like repetitively. You know, in Da Vinci Code, you have that main theme that's introduced at the ending of the film, right? But in Pirates of the Caribbean, you have this very, very strong, resonant feeling of thematic material. And it's something that I think, you know, watching Hans's masterclass and understanding the way for which he used Jack Sparrow's theme and the way for which he wrote it, I think that it really calls for a lot more thematic material. Of course, we saw that in Batman as well, but I think in Pirates of the Caribbean, there's even more of that stuff going on, more melodic thematic material. And if you guys know the story, Klaus Beldet, who's a German composer that also went through the RCP program to get to where he is, pretty much what ended up happening is that Klaus was under Hans, and Hans had already committed to a project, and Hans got approached by Gore Verbinski and the Pirates of the Caribbean crew about this film, and he was pretty much like, I don't really have time to do this. I was already called on to another project, and I told them I would never, moonlight any other project to try to see, if it was something that I wanted to do, because I'm going to stick with this project, and that's final. So what ended up happening is that Hans sort of handed it off to Klaus, and Klaus then was in charge of composing the score. But one thing that is interesting about this situation is that Hans was the person that wrote most of the thematic material for the first movie, which then again went on into the further films. Michelad, how you doing, man? He asked, what's RCP? So RCP is Remote Control Productions, which is the studio empire that Hans created and developed, which sort of has outputted a lot of the main prevalent composers in the film scoring world, everywhere from Trevor Morris to Harry Gregson Williams and Marco Beltrami and I don't know, not Marco Beltrami, what's his name? Henry Jackman, yeah. So that's sort of that. Each film in the Pirates of the Caribbean series sort of develops based on the previous thematic material, right? So, the thematic material introduced in the third movie wasn't as heavily developed in the fourth movie, but I'm thinking that in this next movie, in the fifth movie, there's going to be a whole lot more thematic material, because there's going to be some new characters, and there's going to be a whole new world that they're sort of going to have to mess around with. But the first movie was sort of the main center point of the series and of the thematic material, and it developed a lot of the ones that we know and love. So if I just go ahead and unmute this. Okay. So let's just talk about our main themes for a second here. So we have our main love theme for Will and Elizabeth. Right? We have our sort of witty Jack theme. So that's what we have going on for that theme. Then, of course, we have our main Pirates theme. Of course, have that little section of it that I think is similar to that. And and the thing that makes this that's actually the Dorian, I believe, not the Lydian, because the Lydian is like the fourth. So it has that. So that's the second mode. And if you were to have like a Lydian, for example, that's a Lydian. And that's something that you hear in a lot of sort of kid scores, like, right? And then with the Dorian, you get that very sort of Irishy feel, like, stuff like that. And so he was really going for that Lydian feel for that theme as well. So that's another thing. So those are like sort of the main themes that are in the film. And then of course we have the Davy Jones theme, which is like, right? That's sort of like the Davy Jones chest, or the Davy Jones locker. I believe that the type of theme that was introduced in the second movie sort of carried on into the third movie, since Davy Jones was still around in the third movie, because he just doesn't die apparently. But then so of course in the new movie we're gonna get a whole new villain, which of course is going to be Capitan Salazar. So we'll see where Geoff Zanelli was going in terms of scoring Captain Salazar. And then of course we have that new relationship in the film or whatever. So we'll see how that goes. One thing I wanted to do here is I wanted to share some photos I recently found on Film Music Media, which is run by Kaya, who's a film music reporter out in Los Angeles. He has some great videos on YouTube if you guys are interested in seeing some interviews of film composers everywhere from Hans Zimmer to Desplat, etc. So here's the cover with the naming system, arrival to execution square. This is the cue that you guys can actually probably see a little bit in that one clip that was released of Jack Sparrow arriving to the guillotine, which is this very sort of funny scene where he escapes. And of course, we see the composer's name, Geoff Zanelli. We have a little parrot here. Let's see what else we have here. Oh, yes. So we have a pretty awesome rising cluster right here, as you guys can see. Again, we have our naming system up here. This track is called Silent Mary Attacks Pirate Ship. Spoiler alert. I guess somebody attacks this pirate ship. So one thing to realize about the score is that there's obviously multiple orchestrators. So here's one orchestrator, and then we have another orchestrator that can be listed here, Walt Fowler. So Walt Fowler, of course, has done things like Batman v Superman, 300 Rise of an Empire, Interstellar, Transformers, Amazing Spider-Man, etc. So, you know, there were multiple orchestrators. Might have been a time crunch issue. I don't think so, but there usually is multiple orchestrators on a film. Okay, so here is Nick Lenny Smith conducting the orchestra. We see property of Walt Disney Studios. We see all the mixing guys back here. Alan Meyerson can be seen right here, and Geoff Zanelli can be seen right here. We have our Pro Tools operators down here. Let's see. So here's our composer, Geoff Zanelli. Like I was saying, he sort of comes out of the RCP world. He's worked on a multitude of scores with Hans. So he's very familiar to the Pirates world. He's worked on all of the other films, and he's also familiar with the workflow of Hans and sort of his compositional approach, especially throughout these last few films. And I think that that's probably one of the main reasons why he was brought onto this project. I would assume, of course, Hans recommended him. Okay, so here we have Nick Lenny Smith, and there's our parrot again. So he's conducting the orchestra. Another photo of Geoff Zanelli. And then our last photo here, this is of Alan Meyerson. So Alan Meyerson is, of course, the mixing engineer and the producer. He's worked on tons and tons of gigantic Hollywood motion pictures. Worked for Harry Gregson Williams for a little bit until Harry went on to somebody else. But he's worked with Hans Zimmer. He's worked with he worked on Rupert Gregson Williams' Hacksaw Ridge and worked on all that stuff. And I mean he's extremely active in the film composing world. And so yeah, that's just a little preview into the fifth film that's going to be coming out soon. And we're getting the soundtrack tomorrow, so we'll be able to go through that and go over that. So that's just a little information about the fifth film score, just as a little teaser. And I look forward to hearing the soundtrack, and I definitely look forward to talking with you guys about the soundtrack. So going on to our next theme here. Let me see. So we did our one day. Okay. Here we go. And then of course what we have going on here is we have a room tone. So this thing is absolutely glorious. This is from Cine Samples. And if I just solo that out, that's what you naturally hear like on a recording. Like if you listen to the soundtrack, you're going to hear this. And if you get rid of it, it just doesn't have as much of a natural feel to it. But again, so we have this main line here. And of course in the film it was, but of course string sampling isn't that advanced yet. So again, you can hear the choirs already down here. Yeah, there's a bit of an interesting issue with this room tone as well. Every single time you sort of play it back, there's this weird sort of like click pop in it. But the way that I actually set it up is that it fades in at the beginning of the track, and then it just sort of loops everything else. So you don't really hear that at all in the recording. But whenever I have to go back and play it back, then there's sort of an issue with that. So pardon the interruption with the soda can opening all the time. So we introduce our main theme with a horn. And one thing that I really love about this, as well as it was recently a score. I believe it was Vikings by Trevor Morris, and there was this really, really beautiful main theme that he did, and it was this very sort of warm, lush, intensive tone. And so what I ended up doing is I sort of tried to recreate it the best way that I could, and I realized that it's actually just like a big brass choir mixed with some really, really low choral stuff, and it really creates that really warm tone. So what I did is I have tubas, trombone, and a solo horn here. And it's a fairly small brass choir, but it introduces that sort of. And even if you wanted to add some more low stuff to it, you could be like this. Nope, not the Albion 3. Definitely not this Cine Samples horn, right? So we have. Then we go to G minor. So yeah, I just want to take a second. Some of you guys are asking about me switching to Cubase. I just want to talk about that for a second. And pardon my cold. It's not really good timing for that, especially since I'm leaving for New York City tomorrow, and I'll be gone all month. So I want this cold to go away because I absolutely hate colds, and it's really intrusive. And I've done multiple live streams on colds, but I could care less because all I want to do is do the live stream. So I'll get through the cold eventually, hopefully. So Cubase, as Michelangelo said, is king when it comes to film composing stuff. I've automatically realized this. I was in Logic forever, and I was that obnoxious kid who was always like, Logic forever, man. Logic forever, bro. I'm never switching. There's no reason for me to switch, And finally, I realized that just everyone was moving over to Cubase. Steinberg was very, very dedicated to continuing the movement of Cubase and continuing to develop Cubase as a whole, especially leaning towards the world of film composition and the things that a lot of us in film scoring really cherish. A lot of the MIDI editing capabilities, much more sufficient and much more advanced. So that's what we were trying to do when upgrading to Cubase, is to open up the availability that we have as composers. And I think that that's sort of what I personally was going for. And why Logic is better than FL? Yeah, I mean FL. I'm not sure I want to talk about FL. FL isn't very commonly. FL is mainly like an electronic music production, software. It's not mainly used for film music and stuff like that. I've seen a few people who use it, and I totally respect that, and I understand why they use it. Maybe they sort of were trained on it, like I was trained in Logic. But now looking back, I realize that Logic might not have been the best software for me to do what it is that I do in, simply because it was very, very buggy. It used way more. It didn't use as much computer power as Cubase does, and that's why Cubase runs so much better. Cubase is far more advanced when it comes to using computer power, and it's much quicker and everything. Really, like, it's much quicker and really loading speeds, exporting speeds, everything. Really, you'll find that it's a bit quicker and a bit more overall advanced. And that's why I love Cubase. And it literally took me 3 hours. A good friend of mine, Michael, who I met back in October in LA at the PMC, he was telling me about Cubase, and I was like, okay, I seriously now have to go to Cubase. And I've tried like literally 3 or 4 times to try to switch to Cubase, and every single time I go back to Logic, I'm like, oh crap, it's gonna take me weeks to learn Cubase, and I have work to do, I have a stream to do, or I have a film to score, and I just need to go back to the thing that works for me. But finally, I had a free day off, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna learn Cubase, and yeah, I absolutely love it. And a few days later, I did a behind the score with one. And the behind the scores are always interesting, because what we try to do in the behind the scores is try to recreate the main themes from film scores, and analyze the way for which the composer used harmony, orchestration, and overall the composer's compositional approach to whatever the film is, so that we ourselves can try to adapt that to our own individual styles and sort of help to observe the world of composers and how they approach this job. And that's similar to what we're doing in the Inside the Mind series. And in the Inside the Mind series is what we're doing, and it's pretty much where we'll take specific composers and we'll analyze the multitude of films that they've done and observe the things that they have done similarly in each of the projects. So with this thing, we're actually taking a look at individual scores. So in this one, we're taking a look at Pirates of the Caribbean. We're taking a look at Titanic, all the things that we've done before. But eventually, what we want to do is sort of try to understand the composer, him or herself, and how they approach this craft. So that's what we're doing with the Inside the Mind series. So, okay. I digress a lot, I apologize. Why is it pulling up the audio? That's funky. There we go. It's because I had an audio track selected in there. Okay, so here's the MIDI information. And you can even see like a little ship, mass right here. You can see like a little outline of a ship. We saw that in Titanic too. It was really funny. Somebody commented on the Titanic behind the score that we did, and they noticed that in the MIDI information there was like a bit of like a shape of a ship, and it was very, very funny because I wasn't intentional at all, and it ended up looking like a ship. But yeah, one sec. We have a question. It looks like somebody asked. Guys, can you help me, please? I just want to know which libraries are good for horror music or horror composing. Yeah, absolutely. Albion 4 is fantastic. It's built specifically for that. It also comes with a built-in synth, which is designed around Spitfire Audio's Edna engine, which was first introduced with their Edna synth, and it's sort of carried on into Albion 1, Albion 4, and Albion 5. And, of course, if they do any others, I assume they'll probably take that exact same setup as well. Omnisphere is very, very helpful. I actually had some issues with Omnisphere in Cubase. I was trying to export this track, and I had it selected from beginning to the end. And whenever I tried to export it, my Cubase would literally crash. Like it would crash in a split second. So I had to go in, I isolated the issue, and it was Omnisphere. And all I had to do is change my bit rate. And, and that ended up solving the issue. But yeah. Okay, Johan asks, how long did it take you to remake your template in Cubase? All right, so I used to sort of one of my good friends, Daniel James. His setup is built around having empty instances, like empty tracks, and then you go in and you sort of fill them in with whatever it is that you need. So that's what I ended up doing. I pretty much created, the folders, strings, brass, percussion, etc., right? And then I put in like 10 tracks into each of them. And then from there, what I did is I just literally loaded as I went. And that's actually much more resourceful and much more useful. So pretty much all of these tracks, like here, like, French horns, trombone, legato, blah, 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 those were all loaded as I went. And that's actually very, very helpful. because you tend to not like reuse stuff all the time, and it's a much more sort of original approach. And when you have a template, you always go back to the same sounds, and things start sounding very, very similar and identical. But when you end up sort of loading stuff as you see fit, and it's much more helpful. And also a really, really good advantage of this is that when you load your template, you haven't just used like 30 gigabytes of RAM or something like that. One thing I do realize about Twitch, not about Twitch, I just saw Twitch in the chat, so I said Twitch. Logic is that Logic is insane with its use of RAM, right? I had a project, and it was 150 tracks, and this thing was using like 55 gigabytes of RAM, and I have a 64 gigabyte of RAM computer. So RAM was something that was heavily intrusive with the functionality of Logic Pro X, and switching over to Cubase, it's like an unbelievable thing, because now we have Cubase, which I think currently we can actually take a look at this together here. Let's see. All right, we're using 21 gigabytes, right? Which is fine. It's I wouldn't be able to do this on my MacBook Pro, and that's another thing. Like, I'm about to go nomad for like 2 months, pretty much. I'll be in New York City and Los Angeles, and I'll have a nomad rig built out of a MacBook Pro and a few other things. But the MacBook Pro is only 16 gigabytes of RAM, because they've yet to build like a 32 gigabyte of RAM MacBook Pro, or 64 would be pretty nice, but it'd be very expensive, noting that the 16 gigabyte of RAM 15-inch top spec was like 2700. But it would be very, very helpful, yeah. Okay, so it'll be interesting going from using 64 to using 16. So you can see in the French horns we have this, we have, and then we have this French horns doing this. Which is sort of like a secondary melody, and you can realize that like the French horn line sort of lands on important parts of the next chord. So and that creates, of course, a suspension, sus4. Right, so that's what we have going on there. And then you can see the dulcimer sort of come back in there. It sort of has this nice floaty, sweeping feel. So that's what we have for the one-day theme in this series. Not the one-day theme, but the sort of Jack. Why do I keep saying Jack? Damn it. Will and Elizabeth. I keep saying Jack because we recently did the Titanic behind the score, and I keep thinking of that. So, okay, we're going into the next section here. So now we're going into the main Pirates of the Caribbean theme, which, of course, ta-da. So this section is mainly built out of like staccatos. Like if I just saw this little section. You can see it's almost like all staccatos. Like it's a very staccato filled section. Then there's a few sustains hidden behind it. So like we have some trombones doing some sustains. We have it being doubled in the violins, and then of course going into this section, like the second round, where it gets a little bit more. We have Metropolis Arc 1, and those are the unison staccatos. we go with that. So as you can see, it's this very sort of jumpy, very alive, very, I don't know, how would you call it? Very sort of quirky, fun theme. And of course, this theme is used throughout the whole entire series. It's sort of that tune that you sort of leave the movie theater being like, oh man, I absolutely love that film. And you sort of, have that theme imprinted in your mind. This cold is so freaking annoying. I'm not even kidding. It's making my throat so dry, and talking is like really, really hard because there are no tissues anywhere. And I'm like dying, but I don't care. Let's keep going. Okay. Oh, geez. Okay. Okay. So that, I mean, He's a Pirate is fairly, self-explanatory in terms of like the style of it. I would say, talking about the orchestration, we have a lot of sort of low brass. We have our main melody and the French horns. Then we have the trombones and the tubas sort of playing the harmony. So if I just actually isolate the trombones and the tuba, and I play this. So you can see they're sort of playing the main harmony while we have the French horns up here. And the Symphony series horns actually had a bit of like a lag issue and a latency issue. And it was a bit annoying because I had to go in and I had to alter all the MIDI information and sort of swipe it over a little bit so that it would get on the line. Because it had a bit of an issue where if you actually quantize it 100%, it would be on the line. And I absolutely love what they say about the Pirates of the Caribbean score and what Hans says. It's like a rock band playing orchestral music, or it's like an orchestra playing rock music. And I love when they use that that sort of phrase, because it's film orchestras are so used to playing sort of like very orchestral based music, and when you have Hans who brings these guys in here and they're just like rocking out to these piratey tunes, it's so incredibly exciting, and I'm sure that they're having a great time doing it. And I saw this interview with Geoff Zanelli, and he was talking about how like just the people in the orchestra, like when you show them the sheet music and they start getting into it, they just are so incredibly vibrant and excited to be playing the music, because it is so different from what they normally do. You know what I mean? And so that's one aspect of this music that makes it so fun. It's like an orchestra playing rock music, and it just has this very sort of piratey feel to it just by the main theme. So this is just like the ultimate quirky. This is like, if somebody was talking to Jack Sparrow and being like, "What are you trying to sneak something?" Or it's like Jack Sparrow being sneaky, right? And so if you hear that tune, I think it's safe to say that Jack Sparrow is trying to steal something or doing something suspicious, because it's this very sort of funny tune that works very, very well in the context of the main theme. right, so we have our virtual Martin Tillman. So this is actually, I sort of forget it. Let's see. Nocturne cello. So this is from Orchestral Tools. Just so it has that. That very sort of probably. Okay, wait. Okay, so we have a couple questions here. And sorry I'm not getting to your questions, guys. I'm just so in this right now. We'll have a little section at the end where you guys can ask questions and I can do my best to answer them. Okay, we have a question about reverb. Okay, reverb. Yeah, so I send my reverb. I've, buses made for my reverb. So I have, let's see if I go to my effects panel here. There we go. And if I click this, you can see I have buses already created for different reverbs, and I use the same exact reverb for each one of them. I use QL spaces because I found that it generally works, and I don't need more than that. But if I ever do, there's plenty of great reverbs out there. But I found this works fine. So I have strings, winds, brass, percussion, and synths, and they're all sort of different reverbs designed for those specific ranges of instruments and the specific frequencies that they all sort of have. And the characteristics that they possess and how they work in spaces. So that's how I have my reverb set up. Okay. So yeah, so that's that main theme. And then, like I said, this next theme is sort of a take on the Will and Elizabeth theme. I said it right this time. It's not Jack and Elizabeth. It's Will and Elizabeth. So it's part of that theme. Played on the oboe. So yeah, so those are just a few different cues from Pirates of the Caribbean, composed by Hans Zimmer, and the first movie being composed by Klaus Baldet. So what we did is we took a look at the various themes that he used, the thematic material that he reused throughout all of the different films, the way for which these specific themes are orchestrated, the type of orchestrational choices that Hans makes. So, for example, using the hammered dulcimer as sort of this doubling technique along, with the strings as like an ostinato doubling technique. We also have the use of heavy sort of deep choirs, and we took a look at how you can use brass chorales to sort of make something a lot fuller and richer. Let's see what else we got. And okay, and that's pretty much it. Another thing to take away from this is noting how you can take one section of a theme and sort of remaster it and rebuild it to work towards another type of setting. So for example, this ending scene where we take this da da da. There's multiple situations for how he uses this. One example is of course this section where we have the oboe. And then, of course, we have the main, place that he uses it, which, of course, is in the cellos. In one day. And then we have the sort of action-y way that he uses it. And so you can see that when you see him live, There's a bit of a latency issue on my keyboard, by the way, so the actual sound that comes into my ears plays back a few milliseconds after I actually play it on the keyboard. But yeah, so those are some things that we went over in this one. And if you guys have any questions regarding these, scores and the way that they're orchestrated or anything like that, I'll do my best to try to help you guys out. So right now what I'm going to go ahead and do is play back this whole entire thing along with the video. And if you guys have any questions while you guys are listening, you guys can go ahead and put those out. And if you guys have any questions that I didn't get to answering, in the thing, I'll go ahead and note those down, and we can go ahead and do a little question and answer type setting. So okay, so let's go ahead and watch this again, and I'll see you guys in a second. right, we're back. So there is just another replay of the suite here. Okay, so we did have a few questions that were sent in while we were watching that, so we'll go ahead and answer those. Let's see, the first one. How much CC1/CC11 are you using? So I'm using a whole lot of modulation. I prefer the use of modulation over the use of volume most of the time. So there is quite a lot of volume automation, though, but for the most part, I try to stick to CC1 for modulation. Like whenever I'm playing, I actually have a keyboard to my side where I play the bass notes with my left hand, and I play the main chords with my right hand, and then I am able to play with the mod wheel, while I'm playing the bass notes, which is really, really helpful because you can knock out 3 birds with 1 stone. So pretty helpful workflow setup. Let's see. How much doubling of the sections is there in your recreations to achieve that sound? So for example, if we go to like the beginning, where we recreated that track from the 3rd film, at World's End. If I just play that. So let's just go ahead and break this down and take a look at all the doubling that's involved here. So, so we have this main patch. This is from, well, actually, no. I usually like to mute this one. Wasn't a fan of that one. Okay, so we have soaring strings, which has this very beautiful tone. If I just slow that and play this, That's just very warm tone. So let's just start out with that. Then we'll just keep adding stuff. So here. So that sort of adds that richer characteristic to it. Violin ostinato. Hammer dulcimer. So that's what we have going on there. So that's just a little taste of like sort of what it's like to double a section like this. Because of course, like I was telling you guys earlier in the stream, Hans Zimmer is probably one of the most difficult composers to mix. I love to interview Alan Meyerson for a second and see how much of a pain in the ass Hans Zimmer is, because there's so much stuff in the low range of his music. Right? If you take a look at all the low synths he has, low choirs, low percussion, low strings, low brass, there's so much stuff in the low section. And being able to mix a track that sounds unified and sounds rich in color, it's very, very difficult when you have that much going on in one specific frequency range. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, this score is very, very versatile in terms of the type of emotional content that you get, right? So you have that very, very beautiful love theme between Will and Elizabeth that was introduced in that track One Day. You have that sort of very quirky, funny theme that Martin Tillman plays on the cello. And if I just grab that for a second, play that. So here that is. Nope, not that one. This one. Right? Oh. So you have that sort of very, very quirky theme. And then, of course, you have the main Pirates theme. And so, there's so much thematic material in this thing. And at this point now, we've done 5 Hans Zimmer scores in the Behind the Scores series. So hopefully we're starting to get a little grasp on the compositional approach and style of Hans. And, this score definitely is very, very nice and meaty and full of rich content. So that's just a little bit about that. Let's see if we have any more questions. Need to get scrolling strings. Yeah. It would be great if sometime you go into detail about your transcription and rearranging process. That's the most amazing part of your presentation, which seems to get glossed over. Yeah, I mean, I'm totally free to answer any questions that you have regarding that process. I'll just sort of give a little overview of it. The first thing that I'll do is I'll listen to the soundtrack front to back. So when I did Narnia, I listened, to the whole entire thing, even though I only recreated a few of those themes. For this one, I listened to sort of the main stuff, the main flesh from the first few films. Didn't listen to a lot of the stuff from the 4th film. Right? And so that's what we had going on for this one. It really depends on which score I'm doing, but for the most part, I try to listen to the whole entire thing to try to get a grasp on the overall production. Then from there, I'll sort of map out all the different types of themes that I want to recreate. So on this one, I mapped out that I was going to recreate one day, then that I was going to recreate the main theme, and so that's in recreating a suite like this, you sort of need to plan out what it is that you're going to do, so that when you're actually, recreating the thing, it's a lot smoother and the process is a lot, smoother in general. So that's what we're doing there. So is live for software isn't getting in the way. I'm much happier in Cubase. The software isn't getting in the way when writing MIDI. Still miss live for sound design. Yeah. Still use live for making my sample lives. Yeah, well, where's Project Chaos, brother? We need. It's gonna be great. Take your time, honestly, because we know it's gonna be great. Think it's over soon anyway. Yeah, I can go a few minutes over. It's all right. Yeah, I use low synths, brass, strings, and drums for my Hans Zimmer imitation track. Glad I won the best production award. Yeah, congratulations on that. You had a great track. I need to get sewing strings. They sound really nice. Oh yeah, I read that one. But anyways, yeah. So that was the little stream for you guys today. Today we sort of walked through the Pirates of the Caribbean score, took a look at the compositional approach that Hans made for these 3 films, including the one that Klaus Baldet scored, the first one, with thematic material by Hans. And we took a look at how he used orchestration, how he used thematic material to overall describe the characters, the settings, in the world of Pirates of the Caribbean. And hopefully, I believe that Geoff Zanelli definitely was the right choice, because Geoff Zanelli has, of course, like I said, worked on all of the other Pirates of the Caribbean films, and he understands the world, the harmonic language, and the way for which the scores are crafted. So I think that Pirates 5 is going to be a great score. From the little bit that I actually heard, like the little sort of teaser that I heard, he was using some pretty serious electric guitars, so it's definitely going to be maybe a bit more modern of a score, but there actually was electric guitars, pardon me. There was electric guitars on the past films, especially on the Jack Sparrow track in the second movie. If you listen to that track, you can hear some pretty aggressive guitars near the ending of that track. But yeah. He says, hey, I'm working with Klaus at the minute. He is a dude. Way to rub it in, asshole. Just kidding. Yeah, Klaus looks like a really, really nice guy from the interview that I saw on Film Music Media. Looks like a really, really good guy. And he's very, very talented as well. I love the stuff that he puts out. And, yeah, really, really good guy. And, so, yeah, just curious, what is on your master bus, if any? I'll show you guys. But she would be right here. Bam. Okay, so we have a limiter, and I think I turned this guy off. Yeah, so just a limiter, just to verify that we aren't going above and beyond with our volume. Got to keep everything in the safe zone. So not much going on there. I usually mix in a separate thing. Some big competition from money. I interviewed him before. Great fella. Yeah, he does look like a very, very nice guy. I mean, that's the thing that, I love when they interview these composer guys, because, whenever we think of these guys, the Hans Zimmers, the James Newton Howards of the world, they're sort of like gods in our eyes in terms of, the type of stuff that they've put out and the history of movies that they've worked on. And I think that, when we see these interviews where they're just sort of, and we realize these are just guys, all the people that are making these gigantic motion pictures, they're just guys who are really good at what they do, who worked really hard, got to where they are. And I think it's really, really interesting to understand the fact that, these really are just guys. They're not gods. They're not, anything like this. So I think that that's definitely one of the pros that I personally got from the Hans Zimmer masterclass, is that you sort of really connect with Hans in a personal way, and you sort of understand the fact that we're all people here, and it really is just about working hard and gaining experience and getting yourself immersed in all the opportunities that you possibly can, and try to get your hands dirty and get yourself involved in situations where you aren't always comfortable, but possibly will help you out. So that's really the overall scheme of things. As composers, we really just want to try to get ourselves involved in all we can and try to widen our pool of influence. That's really what it's all about. I think that limiter causes the latency you have complained about. My Okay, there we go. Just make sure nothing else is going on over here. Black Flag. What about Black Flag? That was Brian Tyler. Wasn't that Brian Tyler? Which limiter? It's the stock Cubase limiter. But yeah, I believe Brian Tyler did. Oh yeah, recently when Brian Tyler was in Poland or Krakow for that one music festival, I believe he performed the suite from Black Flag, which is really, really nice. All right, so any last things? Okay, all right. Sweet. So anyways, yeah, so thank you guys so much for joining me today. I had a great time. For you guys that didn't see the whole entire thing, this will be on YouTube fairly soon, and you guys will be able to watch it from front to back. And if you guys get all the way to the end, drop a comment. Let me know how you guys enjoyed it. And again, it's always my pleasure to be here on live stream with you guys. It's really, really nice to interact with you guys and to sort of try to, say hi, because, as composers, we're always stuck in our studios all the time, and, we never see the light of day, at least for me, because I don't have a studio with Windows, so it's nice to sort of, say hi to everyone and to network and to see how all you guys are doing. So this is actually the last live stream that I will probably be doing for a couple months, because tomorrow I get on a plane and I'm out for New York City. I'll be there all month. It's going to be a whole lot of, it's going to be a whole lot of work. I have 3 different workshops lined up back to back. So the day that the first workshop ends, the second one begins, and it's just sort of back to back. And then I'm off to LA for some fun ventures. It's going to be a good time, and I'm going to try to actually vlog from all these different places. I'll try to say hi to you guys in any way that I possibly can, because this is truly one of my great passions, connecting with everyone and seeing how everyone's doing and doing these live streams, which hopefully helps you guys out. That's sort of the goal for each of them, is to do my best to help you guys out. Sean Bridle says, Ashman is my good friend, so he won't mind me saying this. He'll see the funny side. He'll see the funny side. I dread this day. His voice drops halfway through the stream. Love you, Ashman. He is slacking, putting his career before all of us. No. I'm not slacking. But anyways, all right. So if you guys have any recommendations for future live streams, please go ahead and send me an email at ashtongleckmancomposer@gmail.com. Shoot me a Facebook message, and I will certainly get back to you. I will make the time to respond. But yeah, so hope you guys have an unbelievable rest of your day. Hope you guys have a productive summer. And thank you guys so much for these past few months. Ever since October, we've been doing streams on a weekly basis. I've been trying to. And it's been a pleasure for each and every one of them. And I hope you guys have a fantastic time. And I'll most definitely Facebook Live as well. So cheers to you all. And for those about to rock, we salute you. Here's one more time, the Pirates of the Caribbean Suite. Enjoy and goodbye.